Hello, Namaskar. This is Firstpost and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. We begin with Bangladesh, where the caretaker leader visited a temple today to reassure Hindus in the country. But is that enough? What is the status of minorities in Bangladesh? Also, what's the deal with Sheikh Hasina? No word on her asylum, as protesters in Dhaka say she should be brought back. A new case has been filed against her. Meanwhile, in West Asia, the US is sending more military assets, warships and submarines amid reports that Iran may strike. We'll bring you up to speed with how the situation is evolving. In the US, Elon Musk interviewed Donald Trump. The highlights: tech glitches, bromance, bizarre statements, and an unmistakable lisp. In Pakistan, a former ISI chief has been arrested, ostensibly for corruption, but dig deeper and you'd find a power struggle linked to Imran Khan. In India, doctors go on strike to demand better working conditions after a young doctor was raped and murdered in Kolkata. We're also talking about the future of jobs on the show, with a new report saying global unemployment is at a 15-year low. Why Africa doesn't have a seat at the United Nations high table, why Serbians are protesting against lithium mining, how the humble makhana became a global superfood, and why Indians online can't stop talking about August 16. That is the joke of the day. The headlines first. Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas meets President Putin in Moscow. Putin reiterates his support for a Palestinian state, says it is the only way to achieve peace in West Asia. Since Russia invaded Ukraine, Putin has moved closer to Israel's foes, Hamas and Iran. Fitch downgrades Israel, citing the war in Gaza. The US credit rating agency lowered Israel's rating from A+ to A. It has warned that the conflict could last well into 2025 and impact economic activity. In February, Moody's gave Israel its first ever credit rating downgrade. Taliban forces in Pakistan's army clash at their northern border. 3 Afghan civilians killed near the Torkham border crossing. The Taliban seized power in 2021 and since then border tensions between Pakistan and Afghanistan have escalated. China's foreign minister to hold talks with Myanmar's junta chief, Wang Yi, will begin his visit to the embattled country tomorrow. The junta has been battling ethnic armed groups along the border with China. The Chinese diplomat will not be meeting detained democracy leader Aung San Suu Kyi. New blackout hits Senegal. Media groups are protesting the new government's economic measures. Most private television channels and newspapers were part of the protest, while 2 popular private radio stations played music instead of broadcasting the news. And South Korea deploys its first sniffer dog trained to detect bed bugs. This is to prevent any infestation as athletes return from the Olympics. Last year, Paris struggled with a bed bug outbreak. South Korea had been largely free of bed bugs for years. It's a question everyone seems to be asking. Are Hindus safe in Bangladesh or are they being targeted? We've heard different answers from different sources, so tonight let's dig deeper. There is no point denying the problem, first of all. Some Hindu temples and homes have been attacked. Even the interim government admits this. Today, Chief Advisor Mohammad Yunus visited a temple in Dhaka, the Dhakeshwari temple. It's one of the biggest in Bangladesh. Yunus also met prominent Hindu leaders there. Later, he issued an appeal to the country. Don't differentiate based on religion. Rights are equal for everyone. That's what he said. Listen in.
এমন বাংলাদেশ আমরা করতে চাচ্ছি যেটা আমরা
The Bangladesh that we want to create will be the Bangladesh of all people. There are no divisions or distinctions between us. We are the people of Bangladesh.
বাংলাদেশের মানুষ বাংলাদেশ, এটি আমরা নিশ্চিত করতে চাই। এটা নিয়ে আর কোনো বাদ বিবাদ ইত্যাদি জানি না।
The gesture is nice, the appeal also sounds genuine, but it does betray weakness. You see, Bangladesh's security apparatus is still recovering. A lot of police officers are on strike. A number of police stations are empty. So enforcing the law is tough. Reports say some officers have started rejoining their duties. But the system is not up and running. That will take time. Which brings us to the attacks. Do we have any numbers on the attacks or casualties? Look at what two minority organizations found. They have logged 205 attacks on the Hindu community, 205 attacks. This could be attacks on temples, attacks on homes, or attacks on shops owned by Hindus. All of it together, 205 such incidents have been reported in 52 districts. That's nearly all of Bangladesh. And casualties? 5 deaths have been confirmed so far. But the final picture is not clear yet. Like I said, the police stations are not functioning. So no complaints, no FIRs, which is why data is hard to compile. Let me show you an example. This house belongs to a Hindu family in Dhaka. As you can see, it is partially burnt. The owner does want to return and live there eventually, but he fears goons will attack again.
For a person who has collected so much stuff, made his house, if somebody burns it, then that person does not wish to go back to that home. But I still want to return to my house and live there because I have lived at that place for so long. But the fear of the goons and the looting that they did, because of that I am scared.
This broadly sums up the situation. Because the attacks may have subsided since last week, but worries remain, which is why some Hindus are on the streets protesting. They're seeking protection from the violence. So the ball is now in the interim government's court. They are saying the right things, but they must put boots on the ground. They must punish those who attack minorities. If not, these temple runs are pointless, and no excuses can be made. We are hearing some justifications from experts in Dhaka. They say the violence is not religious. Most Hindus supported Sheikh Hasina's party, so the revenge, they say, is political, not religious.
Basically, it's politically motivated because Awami League is targeted. So there are a few Hindu, they are Awami League leaders. They hold some positions in the Awami League. That's the major cause for these attacks. It's not religiously motivated.
That's a sweeping assessment, almost like an excuse to justify the violence. Let's hope the interim government does not buy into it, which brings us to the trigger of all this chaos. Sheikh Hasina. She is still holed up at a safe house in New Delhi, but in Dhaka there is a clamor for accountability. They want her to stand trial. A murder case has been filed against Hasina. It concerns a police killing last month. On July 19th, a protest had been organized in Dhaka. The police opened fire on the protesters. A local grocer was shot as he crossed the road. Now, his family does not have the resources to fight this case, so a private citizen has taken it up. The question is, what will this case lead to? Could Sheikh Hasina be forced to return? Top lawyers have already talked about this. Top lawyers in Bangladesh, the Supreme Court Bar Association had also released a statement there. They wanted India to arrest and send her back. New Delhi did not react to that request. It came from the lawyers. But what if it comes from a court in Bangladesh? What if it comes from the Home Ministry in Dhaka? Well, then it could be complicated. So the situation is troubling for both sides. India wants Dhaka to protect minorities. Dhaka wants continued support from India. And stuck in the middle is Sheikh Hasina. The interim foreign minister says her status will not affect bilateral ties. But that's easier said than done. Hasina and Hindus are the two factors in this relationship at the moment. Both are targets, but in very different ways. West Asia is sitting on a knife's edge, waiting for Iran to attack and suffering in the suspense on when and how that attack will come. It's been almost 2 weeks now, 2 weeks since Israel strikes in Lebanon and Iran. It was an escalation. Iran said it will retaliate. The region and the world began preparing for it. Flights are being diverted almost every day now. Iranian proxy Hezbollah has been firing rockets into Israel. Today, Hamas fired 2 rockets towards Tel Aviv from Gaza. The Americans are sending more warships in anticipation, but Iran is yet to strike. Every day, new reports, new assessments are released. The latest one says this: Iran and its proxies could strike within 24 hours. That is the latest assessment. And the targets could be well beyond Israel. It could be the Americans too.
We do share the assessment made by our Israeli counterparts that something could happen as soon as this week by Iran and its proxies.
The US has a big presence in West Asia and it's beefing up its defenses. First, they sent an aircraft carrier with 35 fighter jets. Now they're deploying a guided missile submarine. It is called the USS Georgia. It is being deployed in this region in West Asia. Clearly, the Americans are concerned, and with good reason. They have multiple bases and extensive military assets in this region. They've been coming under attack ever since the Israel-Hamas war began last year. Let me show you some numbers. During the Gaza war, the US and allied forces have faced more than 170 attacks. 102 incidents were reported from Syria, another 70 incidents from Iraq, and 1 from Jordan. Now, these attacks have left people dead or wounded. At least 145 US military personnel dead or wounded in these attacks. The most recent attack happened just 8 days ago on the 5th of August. And what was the target? The Al-Assad air base in Iraq. It is used by the US and its allies. And who is behind these attacks? In most cases, it's Iranian proxies. As Israel intensifies attacks on Gaza, these proxies target America and its military assets. So far, all of this has been a low-intensity conflict, but now things could change. That is the fear, that Iran would order its proxies to scale up these operations and to strike US military assets with greater force. The Houthis in Yemen are already issuing threats.
Our operations towards the occupied Palestine to target the Israeli enemy, our operations in the seas, the inevitable and upcoming response operation, as well as coordination with the Axis in any joint operations.
So American military bases remain vulnerable. So does Israel, which is obvious. If Iran attacks, Israel will top the list of targets. After all, Tehran wants to extract revenge for the death of Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh. He was the political chief of this terrorist group. Haniyeh was killed on Iranian soil, inside Iran's capital city of Tehran. Mossad agents had planted a bomb in his apartment. This bomb was planted 2 months back and detonated when the Hamas leader arrived there. Israel has not claimed the operation. They've not taken responsibility. It seldom takes credit for overseas operations, but at this point, it doesn't really matter. There is little doubt that Israel did it, and now it is bracing for a direct attack.
We take seriously the statements and remarks by our enemies, and therefore, we are at peak preparedness for attack and defense, and we will act according to the instructions of the political level.
Like I said, it's not clear when and how Iran will attack. It's not clear what the scale of the attack would be. But Israel is not waiting to find out. It is issuing warnings. It says targeting the civilian population would be crossing a red line. Reports say Israeli leaders are also mulling other options, like considering a preemptive strike on one of the Iranian proxies. Talk about making a bad situation worse. This could easily spiral out of control. Western diplomats are apparently trying to prevent this. On Monday, they sent a message to Tehran. The West asked Iran to stand down. What do you think the response was? Iran shot back. Listen to their statement. Such a request lacks political logic, flies in the face of the principles and rules of international law, and constitutes public and practical support for Israel. It's hard to argue with this. And what was the West even thinking? Asking Iran to stand down and also making it public is like adding fuel to the fire instead of trying to douse it. No retaliation would be ideal, but expecting it would be naive. Iran believes Israel has violated its sovereignty, so it will respond, A, to restore the balance of power in the region, and B, to reassure its proxies. That would mean decisive military action. But clearly, Iran also sees the consequences, so it is offering a way out. If Israel agrees to a ceasefire in Gaza, Iran may not strike. That is the offer. Reports say Iranian officials have sent this message to the West via mediators. The price of avoiding a wider regional war is a ceasefire in Gaza. Talks between Israel and Hamas were set to resume later this week. Egypt or Qatar could host them, and Iran's offer seems to be aimed at these talks. This basically means that the ball is back in the court of Israel and its Western allies. They must deliver a ceasefire now. It was 20th January 2017. X was still Twitter. Donald Trump had won the presidential election. He was about to take the oath of office. And he started his inauguration with this, a tweet. It was an indication of what would follow, a barrage of tweets. Among the top highlights of the Trump presidency, his tweets. More than 20,000 in 4 years. That's how much he tweeted. He used Twitter to announce strikes, to level accusations, lash out at enemies, disrupt American policies, all with the tap of a finger. But this relationship between Trump and Twitter came to a brutal end in 2020. When Trump lost the White House, there were Capitol riots, Twitter banned him, and Trump was left without his favorite app. Now, 4 years later, this love story has come full circle. Twitter is now X. It is owned by Elon Musk. And he got Trump back on the platform with an interview. There you have it, Elon Musk with Donald Trump, two mercurial men supporting each other and trying to boost Trump's ratings. So Elon Musk sat down to interview Donald Trump on X. It was touted as the comeback of the year, but it started with this. The interview was scheduled for 8 p.m. local time, but it did not start on time. It was delayed by a full 45 minutes because of what looked like a technical glitch. Musk called it an attack, though. A DDoS attack, basically bad actors driving traffic to a site to disrupt servers. Trump, on the other hand, called it regular traffic. He thanked his millions of followers. So after a 45-minute delay, the two men were online. And then it was regular programming, the same old fare, conspiracy theories, weird one-liners, and banal chatter, your usual Tuesday stuff.
Like we're having a great conversation right now. Kamala wouldn't have this conversation. She can't because she's not smart. You know, she's not a smart person, by the way. She can't have this conversation.
This is a really big point. You can actually have a conversation with you.
Yeah, it's nice, isn't it?
Of course, the focus was on Kamala Harris. Trump called her leftist. He accused her of trying to defund the police. He pronounced her name wrong and even compared her to his wife.
He hasn't done an interview since this whole scam started. And say what you want. This was a coup. This was a coup of a president of the United States. He didn't want to leave, and they said, we can do it the nice way or we can do it the hard way.
I think we're in massive trouble, frankly, with the Kamala administration, and that's my honest opinion. And I think really it's essential that you win for the good of the country for this election. And I mean, I'm just stating my opinion.
She's terrible, but she's getting a free ride. I saw a picture of her on Time Magazine today. She looks like the most beautiful actress ever to live. It was a drawing. And actually, she looked very much like our great First Lady, Melania.
Quite the gushing and compliments from Donald Trump. Also a little weird. Imagine comparing your top opponent to your wife. But it wasn't even his worst moment of the interview. There were too many gems there. Like, what would Trump do if he loses the next election? Will he retire? And what would that look like? Listen to what he said.
something happens with this election, which would be a horror show. We'll meet the next time in Venezuela because it'll be a far safer place to meet than our country. Okay, so we'll go. You and I will go, and we'll have a meeting and dinner in Venezuela.
So he will move to Venezuela and Elon Musk will meet him there. Not sure how that's a good plan, because just a few days ago, Musk had challenged the Venezuelan president to a fight. He said he'll carry him on a donkey to Guantanamo Bay. Now he plans to have dinner in Venezuela. It's hard to keep up or make sense of it. But optimism is the key here. And we learned that from Trump, especially when he was asked about climate change.
You know, the biggest threat is not global warming, where the ocean's going to rise 1/8 of an inch over the next 400 years. And you'll have more oceanfront property, right? The biggest threat is not that. The biggest threat is nuclear warming.
So according to Trump, climate change equals rising sea levels equals more beachfront properties, which makes you wonder, why did no one ever think about that? Trust Donald Trump to be the visionary here. Although what really stood out in this interview was the bromance. The two men could not stop praising each other.
This Cutter, I mean, I look at what you do. You walk in and you just say, you want to quit? They go on strike. I won't mention the name of the company, but they go on strike and you say, that's okay, you're all gone.
Praising someone for layoffs, it could not get more Trumpian. The interview got around 73 million views, but X claims the total impressions were close to 1 billion. Either way, Donald Trump got what he wanted, visibility. He wanted to dominate the news cycle. For weeks, the Democrats have captured the airwaves, so Trump had to get back on top. To that extent, this interview has delivered. But it has also exposed a problem. It was hard to understand what Trump was saying. He had a lisp throughout the conversation. His speech was slurry. His words were difficult to decipher, and many people wondered what was wrong with him. The Trump campaign was asked about this, and they had quite the blunt response. They said, it must be your ears. Well, it's unlikely that all of us have a lisping filter installed. But then again, that's Trump for you, always on the offensive, now flanked by his enabler-in-chief, Elon Musk. Will it boost his ratings, though? We'll have to wait and see. Our next story is from Pakistan. A historic event took place in the country yesterday. A retired 3-star general was arrested. Lieutenant General Faiz Hamid was taken into military custody, where he's awaiting a court-martial. Hamid may become just the 3rd general-level officer to ever get court-martialed in Pakistan. Now, this alone would be news. The Pakistani military taking on one of their own. But it's Hamid's profile that's making headlines. Lieutenant General Faiz Hamid was the previous head of the ISI. It's Pakistan's inter-services intelligence, the largest and most infamous Pakistani intelligence agency. Its former head is now in the dock, and this has never happened before. Never in the history of Pakistan. Never before has their military taken action against someone so high up. But Hamid now faces a court-martial, that too over corruption. So how did this come to transpire? Is Pakistan's military really cleaning up its act? Should we start expecting an honest and forthright Pakistani military? Of course not. While there's definitely a graft angle here, it's also a case of power and politics. We'll start with the corruption case that has ensnared Hamid, and then look at the bigger picture. So first, the case. It dates back to May 2017. A housing society in the city of Rawalpindi was raided by Pakistan's paramilitary forces and some members of the ISI. They raided the society. It was called Top City. That's what the society was called. The forces said it was an anti-terrorism operation. They claimed to have seized weapons and caught a number of terror suspects. The owner of the housing society was also picked up. A few months later, he was acquitted by Pakistan's anti-terrorism court. And this was done after some mediation by Lieutenant General Faiz Hamid's brother. So the society owner is acquitted. After this, a meeting was held between Hamid and the society owner, where Hamid told the owner that some of his things will be returned. The things that were seized during the raid, some of them will be given back, but some others will be kept by Hamid. What did he keep back? 4 kilograms of gold and cash. This Hamid did not return. And then he kept extorting the society owner. This is the charge against him. This is basically the case. And the Pakistani military seems to believe it. Listen to their statement after Hamid was picked up yesterday, and I'm quoting, "Complying with the orders of Supreme Court of Pakistan, a detailed court of inquiry was undertaken by Pakistani army to ascertain the correctness of complaints in top city case made against Lieutenant General Faiz Hamid. Consequently, appropriate disciplinary action has been initiated under provisions of Pakistan Army Act." This makes it sound like they're cracking down on crime and dispensing impartial justice. But when you look at the big picture, things become clearer. Hamid is thought to have been close to Pakistan's former Prime Minister Imran Khan. He allegedly helped engineer the 2018 Pakistan election. He apparently helped Imran Khan come to power, and as a reward, Hamid was named ISI chief the following year. But in 2021, Pakistan's military removed him from the post. This caused a rift between the military and Imran Khan. And we know how that turned out. Khan was ousted in 2022, he was imprisoned in 2023, and 1 year later, he still languishes in jail. Now his old friend Hamid might be joining him. This doesn't look like an anti-corruption drive by Pakistan's military anymore. It looks more like vendetta and a power struggle. Different factions of Pakistan's military fighting to put their own puppets in charge because the military holds the real power in this country. Here is a list of some accusations against Hamid: robbing a housing society owner, engineering elections, threatening and bribing politicians, imprisoning the opposition, trying to manipulate judicial selections, creating illegal trusts to hoard ill-gotten wealth. This list goes on, and it would put most hardened politicians to shame. But remember, Hamid wasn't even a politician. He was a 3-star general. How can a salaried military officer hold so much power? How can they get away with so much? The people of Pakistan should start questioning the outsized role of their military, or their democracy will continue to be a joke, no matter how many court-martials take place.
We want justice! 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 এখন অব্দি সিসিটিভি কাজ করছে না কেন বল? প্রত্যেকটা ফ্লোরে কেন?
This is the biggest story from India. Thousands of doctors are on strike across the country. Delhi, Pune, Kolkata, everywhere it's the same story. Doctors have put down their scrubs. They're seeking justice for one of their own, a young doctor who was raped and murdered in Kolkata. She was 31 years old. She was a second-year student at the RG Kar Medical College, and her story will make your blood boil. On Thursday, she was on duty. At around 2 a.m. in the morning, she finished her dinner. Then she wanted to get some rest. The medical college did not have an on-call room, so she tried the seminar room, and that's where horror struck. A civic volunteer brutally raped and murdered her. She had injuries all over her body. Even her eyes and mouth were bleeding, and her neck bone was broken. And don't forget where all of this happened: inside a medical college. The police have apprehended the killer. The college principal has been transferred to a different campus. Transferred, not terminated. But this controversy does not end here, because it reveals a larger problem, the problem of our broken medical system. And that's why doctors are protesting. Yes, they want accountability in this case, but they also want larger reforms. And we say it's about time. This is a country of 1.4 billion people, so health isn't just another welfare issue, it is a strategic priority for us. Look at the state of our medical infrastructure, underfunded and lagging. India has 7.3 doctors per 1,000 people, 7.3 per 1,000. Pakistan has 10.8. China has 24, the United States has 35. So the gap is pretty wide. Now the government has been trying to fix this. The number of medical colleges is up 82% in the last 10 years. The number of MBBS seats is up 112%. So the number is going up, the quantity is going up, but that alone is not enough. The journey from a student to a doctor is quite a tough one. You start with a NEET entrance exam. This year's test was mired in controversy. Leaked papers, controversial grace marks, a Supreme Court case, you name it, NEET had it. But suppose you clear the test. You make it to a medical college. The government ones won't cost you very much, but the private ones charge a lot, around 1 crore rupees for a 4.5-year course. And it's a brutal course. Look at the data from 2018 to 2023. More than 150 MBBS students dropped out. So did more than 1,100 PG students, plus 122 students died by suicide. The reasons are mostly the same across colleges: academic pressure, burnout, and mental health challenges. Suppose you too are feeling the same. You don't think the course is worth it, so you want to drop out. Well, tough luck. Most states make you sign contracts or bonds. They come in two basic forms: a seat-leaving bond and a service bond. Colleges charge a fine if you abandon your course. It is considered a waste of medical resource. And guess how much the fine is? Between 5 lakh and 50 lakh rupees. That is what you pay as fine. It depends on which state you're in. 5 to 50 lakh rupees. The second bond requires you to work in government hospitals or clinics. Again, the details differ. The bond can last between 1 and 5 years. The fine is between 10 lakh and 1 crore rupees. So basically, the student is boxed in. First, they spent half a decade in medical colleges, then another half a decade in state health care. Do you know what's common in both? Poor standards. Take a look at this report. Almost 80% of India's medical colleges do not meet regulatory criteria. The hostels are poor, the infrastructure is old, the faculty is absent, and ragging is rampant. This is the condition in 4 out of 5 colleges, and this is where students spend half a decade. Then they head to state healthcare. Again, the same situation. 80% of public health centers are below par, and don't forget the salary, just a fraction of what private hospitals pay. Which is why brain drain is such a big issue among Indian doctors. You're not getting paid well, the facilities are poor, so why would you stick around? Around 59,000 Indians work as doctors in the US, Britain, Canada, and Australia. They make up 5% of the US workforce, 11% of the UK's. And can you blame them? After all this struggle, anyone would put money first. The question is, how do we fix it? Obviously, government funding is a big problem. Lancet magazine says India only spends 1.2% of its GDP on health. Compare that to China. They spend around 7% of their GDP on health. So in this case, throwing money at the problem is a solution. Maybe it could have saved that doctor's life in Kolkata. And we're not talking about complicated upgrades. Even simple ones may have helped, like having a separate on-call room, or more lighting in corridors, or more security personnel, or more CCTV cameras. Our doctors clearly deserve it. Just think back to the Wuhan virus pandemic. These same doctors rescued us. They worked, while you worked from home, they put in 24-hour shifts. They went days without taking a break, without seeing their family. So we as a nation must repay them. Not just by banging pots outside our house, but by spending more on India's medical infrastructure. Now let's talk about jobs. It is perhaps the most pressing issue in the developing world today, especially in countries like India, where millions of workers join the workforce every year, but there are fewer jobs to go around. Job creators are not being able to keep up with the rising number of job seekers. But according to the United Nations, the picture is not so bleak. They say we are better off than before, that youth unemployment worldwide is at a 15-year low, meaning it's the best time in the last 15 years to look for a job. So if you're a young graduate today, where would you find that job? In which countries, in which sectors, and what will the future job market look like? Our next report decodes the trends.
The past 4 years have been tough for job hunters. The pandemic was the first blow. It severely hampered the job market. The lockdown forced employers to order layoffs on a massive scale. Over 100 million people worldwide lost their jobs due to the pandemic. The situation didn't get any better in the following years. From the tech industry to the banks to the construction sector, even the media and entertainment industry, the world's largest companies have undergone some form of downsizing over the past few years. But if the International Labour Organization is to be believed, things might be starting to get better, at least for the young people. The ILO claims just 13% of the youth, that's workers between 15 to 24 years of age, remained unemployed last year. That's a 15-year low. There are two factors behind this recovery. First, new workers entering the market are finding jobs. Second, those who lost their jobs during the pandemic have started to find work again. So after the shock from the pandemic, there's finally some recovery. But it remains patchy. While advanced economies like the United States and the European nations have managed to bounce back, a different story is playing out in the developing world. Many middle to low income nations are reporting high levels of unemployment and fewer jobs are being created. Take Africa, for instance. At around 7%, it has one of the highest unemployment rates in the world. There is a chronic shortage of jobs, and it could get worse. By 2035, 450 million people could be living in Africa, but there may be only 100 million new jobs by then. Where will more jobs come from? The ILO report provides some clues. More workers are finding work in the services sector, particularly in 4 industries: trade, transport, accommodation, and food services. The World Economic Forum has also identified 3 more industries ripe for creating new jobs. They are energy with a focus on the renewable space, IT and digital communications, and the caregiving sector. So what kind of skills would one need to crack into this space? Workers with the skills to interpret data and make decisions would be in high demand. So will those who can come up with creative ways to solve problems. Firms would also need employees proficient in AI and big data. Earlier, finding a job simply meant updating your CV and applying to companies hoping to ace the interview process. But the world is now on the cusp of a disruption in the job market. Finding a job amid this chaos can be challenging, but those who think outside the box will certainly prevail.
Now let's turn our attention to Africa. It is the world's second largest continent, both in terms of size and population. In both these metrics, Africa is second only to Asia. Africa is also the world's youngest continent. The average age is just 19. Every other continent is aging. The median age in Asia and South America is 31. Europe, North America, and Oceania are even older. But Africa, on average, isn't even 20 yet. So it's a young continent that is growing. And by the end of this century, it will be home to about 40% of the human population. Now, there's a reason I gave you that demographic data. It was to highlight Africa's importance in the years to come. But now let's come back to the present and look at exactly what Africa already influences.
Africa is underrepresented in global governance structures, from the Security Council to international financial institutions, but overrepresented in the very challenges these structures are designed to address. Conflicts, emergencies, and geopolitical divisions have an outsized impact on the African continent. And this Council's agenda demonstrates this. Nearly half of all country-specific or regional conflicts on your agenda concern Africa.
The UN Secretary-General made a valid point. Conflicts, emergencies, and geopolitical divisions have an outsized impact on Africa. But the continent is underrepresented in global governance structures. Africa is subjected to all the world's problems, but it does not have a fair say in the solutions. One disparity in particular was highlighted.
We cannot accept that the world's preeminent peace and security body lacks a permanent voice for a continent of well over 1 billion people, a young and rapidly growing population, making up 28% of the membership of the United Nations.
He's talking about the United Nations Security Council. It's the world's top security body, made up of 5 permanent members and 10 temporary ones who keep rotating. The permanent members are the US, the UK, France, China and Russia. These 5 countries have the coveted veto power, and they always have a say on global security issues because they are permanent members of the UNSC. Now look at those nations again. You have the US from North America, China from Asia, India should be on that list, and the UK and France from Europe. Russia is in both Europe and Asia, so only 3 of the 6 populated continents have permanent members. And Africa, the second largest continent in the world, doesn't have one. So why did the UN distribute power so unevenly? Well, you must remember that the United Nations was founded in 1945. Its hierarchy reflects a bygone era. In 1945, most of Africa was colonized. The African people were technically represented at the UNSC by their colonial overlords. It was the same for India. In 1945, we were still trying to throw off the English yoke. But the UNSC was frozen during that turbulent time. And even though the world is very different now, the UNSC has refused to get with the program. It drags its feet when it comes to opening up membership, no matter how deserving the country. But the tables are slowly turning.
The fact that Africa continues to be manifestly underrepresented on the Security Council is simply wrong, offending as it does both the principles of equity and inclusion. It runs counter to the principle of sovereign equality of states and calls for the urgency to reform this institution to reflect the world as it is now rather than what it was nearly 80 years ago.
More and more people are speaking up, demanding fairness, better representation and an end to the UNSC's old world outlook. Africa deserves a member, so does South America. India should definitely be in the UNSC. It's just the logical thing to do. But the UNSC wouldn't reform itself due to logic alone. We need to keep building pressure and support each other's case. Only then is there some hope for change. And now let's talk about lithium, also known as white gold. There's a rush for this metal across the world. It's because how important it is for energy transition. Lithium is used to make batteries for electric vehicles. Every country is looking to mine it, and Serbia has one such project. A lithium mine that could cater to 90% of the European Union's demands. Except there's a problem. The Serbians want it shuttered, and they're turning up on the streets to protest. Our next report tells you why.
On Sunday, thousands took to the streets of Belgrade. They marched across the Serbian capital to protest against one project, the Rio Tinto lithium mining project.
The mine cannot be built on agricultural land. In 30 years, you will have a desert there. Agriculture from the village brings more income to this country than the Rio Tinto mine. And ultimately, for our health and the health of everyone, this mine should not be allowed.
This will ruin our country, ruin our arable land and fields, and in the end there will be no positive effect. Above all, the story of economic power for Serbia is the same as digging diamonds in South Africa.
Serbia has massive deposits of lithium. They were discovered in the year 2004. They are located in the Jadar Valley, near the western city of Loznica. Rio Tinto, an Anglo-Australian company, was given the license to mine here to extract lithium. The project was worth $2.4 billion. In 2022, the license had to be revoked due to protests. But the project was restarted last month following a government U-turn, and it's backed by the European Union. Last month, deals were signed granting EU car makers like Mercedes and Stellantis exclusive access to Serbian lithium, which makes it crucial for the entire bloc. Lithium is a strategically valuable metal. It's used to make batteries for electric vehicles. The EU is trying to transition to zero emissions, and this mine is crucial to its plans. It could meet almost 90% of the EU's lithium needs. Plus, it could be one of the world's largest lithium producers. But Serbians say it would damage the environment. It would pollute their land and water, leading to public health hazards.
The government knows that they will lose the support of Germany and Scholz and the whole of Europe and America, of course, and that they will let them down the water after that. That's why they accuse us that we want to overthrow the government and we only defend our country.
Earlier, Serbian President Aleksandar Vučić vowed that no mining operations will begin until environmental safety is guaranteed. But that did not stop the protests. So Vučić has changed his tune. He calls these demonstrations a coup attempt against him. His government says that the protesters have a political motive.
I do not think the goal of the protest is genuine. They are not concerned about the environment. Their goal is political, and it's targeted against the government of Serbia.
The Serbian government says that charges will be filed against all protesters. But it's unlikely that the Serbians will stop their protest until the project is axed.
What if we told you about a superfood that would make you live longer? Would you be interested? It is naturally grown, healthy, cheap, tasty, and most likely sitting in your nearest grocery store. What are we talking about? Well, that depends. Gen Z likes calling it plant pop. Most Indians call it makhana, and that's the term we will use tonight, mostly to avoid confusion. Because fun fact, makhana is also called foxnut, when it is not a nut at all, it is a seed. It is also called lotus seed, when in fact it is a seed of the water lily and not lotus. Seriously, who is naming plants these days? But jokes aside, this is the contentious plant that gives us makhana. This floating lily is native to Asia. It is widely grown in India, China and Japan, but 90% of the world's makhana comes from just one state, and that is Bihar, the northwestern state of India, the northeastern state of India. It receives heavy rainfall. This is ideal weather for the plant because it grows in stagnant wetlands. No fertilizers or pesticides are needed. It is naturally organic, but harvesting it is a labor-intensive job. It is mostly carried out by fishermen. They dive to the bottom of deep, muddy ponds at depths of about 8 feet. They find seeds of the water lily, which grow underwater. Once harvested, it is washed, roasted, and hit with a mallet. The seed shell pops open, exposing the white part that is actually eaten, hence the name plant pop. This is an exhausting process. It is crude and manual, also unhygienic and dangerous. Yet, producing makhana is a generational industry in India. The food is well loved here. It is eaten as a snack, also added to dishes and desserts, especially the milk pudding called kheer. Makhana is loved in neighboring China as well, where it is grown for medicinal purposes. But over the past few years, there has been a shift. Makhana has gotten a makeover. It is now a global hit with a market worth $43 million and growing. It is gaining prominence as a superfood. It is a powerhouse of minerals like calcium, magnesium, zinc, and potassium. It is high in vitamin B, protein, and fiber. It has less fat and calories. It helps lower your weight, blood pressure, and cholesterol levels. So it is packed with benefits, and it can be tasty. On its own, it is a bland food, but it acts as a sponge. It takes on the flavor of any spice you toss it in, and people are getting quite creative with that last bit. There are wasabi makhanas, peri-peri, caramel, also cheese and tomato. It is a healthier alternative to junk food any day. So supermarket aisles are stocking roasted makhanas. Celebrities are endorsing it. And people are nutty over fox nuts on TikTok. But how did this happen? How did the humble makhana become a global superfood? Well, there are three reasons. One, people got creative. Two, social media helped. And three, India realized the superpower of makhana. We dove right into this huge market by choosing not to dive into muddy waters anymore. Thanks to Indian farmers, they're changing the cultivation process. The lily plants are now grown in shallow waters, so seeds are harvested at a quicker pace, and there are more job opportunities for women here. There are more experiments with seeds as well. There are newer machines that roast and pop the fox seeds. Farmers are making more money. The industry is only growing. In 2022, foxnut farming was being done on about 35,000 hectares, which is a threefold increase over a decade. So in a gist, better hygiene, lesser time and labor, and higher output. It is a perfect mix. It has made makhana India's new culinary mascot. Before our last story tonight, let me ask you a question. When you think about life on Mars, what do you picture? Maybe airborne sleeping pods or multi-level housing towers. But what do you think about underground colonies? We ask because scientists have discovered water on Mars. It is an underground reservoir, enough to fill an ocean that covers the entire planet. That is a lot of water, and this is good news. But the problem is, this water is too deep to tap. What does this mean for human life on Mars? Is the Martian underground habitable? Here is a report.
Rugged and tan. No, we aren't talking about a rom-com hero. We're describing the crust of Mars. Yes, the planet that billionaires seem to be obsessed with. But this is a good day to be a billionaire. Much like any other day, because scientists have finally done it. NASA has found water on Mars. They've discovered a reservoir of liquid water deep in the crust of the planet, enough to make up a whole ocean. Scientists say it's enough to cover the entirety of Mars to a depth of 1.6 kilometers. How did NASA find this water? It's all thanks to an outer space robotic explorer, the InSight lander. It touched down on Mars in 2018. It studied Martian quakes or Marquakes, as many as 1,300 of them. It studied the seismic vibrations to understand how the red planet moves. This data has revealed the presence of underground water on Mars. Now, we know what you may be thinking. Didn't we already find water on Mars? Well, we did. In 2015, NASA found liquid salt water on Mars. But this latest discovery is significant because it indicates that there's a much larger amount of water on the planet, which might make it possible for humans to inhabit it. But there is a catch here. The Martian water is playing hard to get. Why? Because it's trapped. It's trapped in tiny cracks and pores of rocks in the middle of the crust.
So the liquid water is roughly 11 to 20 kilometers beneath the subsurface, and getting that liquid water would be quite challenging. For example, on Earth, you often have to circulate fluids, whether that be liquid water or mud, to make drilling a little bit easier.
Just as on Earth, on Mars as well, humans will need drills and other equipment to use the water. They will need power capabilities on the foreign planet. So they will either have to bring such high-level technology to Mars or make the technology on the planet. Either way, this will be challenging. But in all likelihood, scientists will try, because humans need water to colonize Mars. That's the long-term priority. But for the time being, researchers have set their goals lower. Now that they've found the Martian water, they want to understand it, its contents, its purpose, and use this knowledge to find out more about the planet itself. The climate, surface and interior of Mars, and if there are habitable environments on Mars buried deep underground. And most importantly, the planet's evolution.
Mars once looked like Earth 3 billion years ago, and now it doesn't. It's dry and it's desolate. And so a big question is, where's the water? Where did it go?
Humans can only hope that the scientists answer these questions. Because do you know what's cooler than living on Mars? Living in sci-fi Martian colonies that are underground.
This week is a pretty special one, especially if you're planning a holiday. This Thursday is India's Independence Day, and next Monday is Raksha Bandhan, a special festival that celebrates siblings. Both days are public holidays, so if you take Friday off, you get a very long weekend. Now, some in our newsroom started getting ideas, but we shut them down fast. But we can't shut down the internet. People have already figured out excuses for Friday. I'm guessing a lot of distant relatives will be dying all of a sudden, and hospitals will be packed with imaginary stomach bugs and viruses. No such joy for us though, because public holidays mean more work for journalists. So our only respite is this: seeing all the jokes that you are cracking on the long weekend. Take a look.
The faster the deliverance, the faster.
क्या बताई बाबू, मन कुछ अंदर से अच्छा नहीं है।
आँखों में से धुआं निकल रहा है, मेरे जहन से फापे कमिंग आउट।
HR मैम, मैं ना बीमार हूँ थोड़ा सा तो डॉक्टर ने मुझे ना बेड रेस्ट के लिए बोला है, तो मैं ऑफिस से सख्त नहीं आ पाऊंगा। आप प्लीज मेरी छुट्टी अप्रूव करवा दोगे क्या?
How would you say your mental focus is?
Oh, it's focused.
Now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. Taiwan welcomes its Olympic athletes with 3 fighter jets escorting the plane carrying them home. A 4.4 magnitude earthquake strikes Los Angeles, and countries mark World Elephant Day to raise awareness about the plight of the animals. Finally, we're taking you back in history. On this day in 1961, East Germany began constructing the Berlin Wall. It separated East Berlin from West Berlin. The wall was a symbol of the Cold War. It came down in 1989 after people broke it down. Leaving you on that note, thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
If it's a political story, we are on the scene. The race for the White House is heating up.
Kamala, you're fired.
I say, bring it on.
If it's breaking news, we're live with the latest coverage. from the White House, the State Department, and Capitol Hill. We know the issues, but above all, we know the players to bring you the latest in-depth analysis on all the key stories that we're covering. I'm Eric Ham. Join me from Washington here on Firstpost America.